Hello and welcome to Quiz Time. I'm Jess, and today I have a British quiz for you. So, right up my street. Is it up yours? Let's find out. Which English monarch was known as the last Plantagenet? Henry VII, Richard III, or Edward IV? Richard III. When was The Lord of the Rings first published and in how many volumes? 1949 to 1964 or 1954 to 1955? 3 volumes. 1954 to 55, 3 volumes. In 1605, what event did Guy Fawkes attempt in London? Assassinate the King, rob the Tower of London, or blow up the House of Lords? Blow up the House of Lords. Which river flows through the city of Oxford, known for its university? The Thames, the Severn, or the Trent? It's the Thames. Who was the well-known speaker and leader of the United Kingdom during the World War II? Clement Attlee, Winston Churchill, or Neville Chamberlain? Winston Churchill. Which British castle is located in the county of Berkshire and is used as a royal residence? Windsor Castle, Edinburgh Castle, or Cardiff Castle? That's a Windsor Castle. Who was the leader of the Normans in the Battle of Hastings in 1066? Richard the Lionheart, William the Conqueror, or Edward the Confessor? William the Conqueror. Which is the oldest institution of higher learning in the United Kingdom? University of Oxford, University of Cambridge, or University of Edinburgh? University of Oxford. What year did the Brexit process begin when the UK formally left the European Union? 2016, 2018, or 2020? I think it was supposed to happen sooner, but it started in 2020 in the end. Which famous British scientist is credited with the discovery of the law of gravity? Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, or Michael Faraday? Isaac Newton. Which British king's abdication in 1936 led to a crisis? King George VI, Edward VIII, or Henry VIII? It was Edward VIII. Identify the British writer whose works include Wild Sargasso Sea and prequel to Jane Eyre. Virginia Woolf, Jean Rhys, or Emily Bronte? Jean Rhys. Which 1215 decision curbed the power of the English monarchy and influenced constitutional law? The Petition of Right, the Glorious Revolution, or the Magna Carta? The Magna Carta. Who is the only British Prime Minister to serve under both a king and a queen in the 20th century? Clement Attlee, Harold Wilson, or Winston Churchill? Winston Churchill. Which dog breed, originally bred from herding in the Scottish Highlands, is known for its agility and Scottish Terrier, Border Collie, or Labrador Retriever? Border Collie. Which famous British explorer was the first to circumnavigate the globe during the 16th century? Sir Francis Drake, James Cook, or Walter Raleigh? Sir Francis Drake. The Great Fire of London, which destroyed much of the city, happened in which year? 1650, 1666, or 1692? It was 1666. The House of Commons of the UK Parliament is located in which historic building? Buckingham Palace, St James's Palace, or the Palace of Westminster? The Palace of Westminster. Which rare British bird is known for its sky dance? Red grouse, European woodcock, or Eurasian curlew? It's the European woodcock. What was the main reason behind the Civil War in England? The conflict between Protestants and Catholics, disputes over royal authority and governance, or trade rivalry with Spain? It was disputes over royal authority and governance. The United Kingdom was the first country to industrialise during the Industrial Revolution. Is that true, or is it false? That is true. Which of the following was the first Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Sir Robert Walpole, William Pitt the Younger, or Winston Churchill? Sir Robert Walpole. The biggest victory for England during the 100 Years' War occurred in where? At the Battle of Agincourt. 1066, 1415, 1588. 1415. Which English monarch had 6 wives, 2 of whom he had executed? Henry VIII, Edward VI, or Richard III? Henry VIII. Which of the following is not a British author? George Orwell, Mark Twain, or Charles Dickens? Mark Twain. What was the name of the ship that carried the Pilgrims from England to America in 1620? The Mayflower, the Golden Hind, or the Beagle? It certainly didn't look as posh as the ship in the picture. It was the Mayflower. Which of these events marked the end of Roman rule in Britain? The signing of the Magna Carta, the Battle of Hastings, or the departure of the Romans in 410 AD? The departure of the Romans in 410 AD. Which British monarch was crowned in 1953? Queen Victoria, King George VI, or Queen Elizabeth II? Our dear late Queen Elizabeth II. The United Kingdom was not involved in the American Revolutionary War. Is that true, or is it false? It's false. Which event in A Tale of Two Cities takes place during the French Revolution and serves as a turning point in the story? The storming of Bastille, Dr. Manet's release from Bastille, or Sidney Carton's sacrifice? Sidney Carton's sacrifice. Which iconic British band led by Paul McCartney and John Lennon is known for Hey Jude and Let It Be? The Beatles, Queen, or Pink Floyd? It's the Beatles. Which English king is famous for his conflict with Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, leading to Becket's murder? Henry II, Richard I, or Edward III? Henry II. What was Hadrian's Wall main objective when it was constructed during the Roman occupation of Britain? To serve as a trade route, to defend Roman Britain from northern tribes, or to provide water for Roman settlements? To defend Roman Britain from northern tribes. Which British city was the author of Sherlock Holmes born in? London, Edinburgh, or Manchester? In Edinburgh. Which English city has been an academic centre since the 12th century? Cambridge, Edinburgh, or Oxford? Oxford. Which of the following was not an original use of the Tower of London? A prison, a royal mint, or an art gallery? It was an art gallery, so it wasn't an art gallery as its original use. Who was the first woman to serve as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Queen Elizabeth II, Margaret Thatcher, or Elizabeth Bow-Lyon? Yes, the formidable Iron Lady Margaret Thatcher. The famous Big Ben bell is located in the clock tower of which building in London? The British Museum, the Palace of Westminster, or Buckingham Palace? It's the Palace of Westminster. The English language is based solely on the Anglo-Saxon language. Is that true or is that false? It is false. What role does the Battle of Waterloo play in British history? It marked the end of World War I, it was the final defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, or it signalled the rise of the British Empire. It was the final defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte. Which British explorer is known for mapping the coasts of Australia, New Zealand, and Hawaii? Sir Walter Raleigh, James Cook, or Francis Drake? James Cook. In which century was the famous British landmark Stonehenge believed to have been built? 10th century BC, 3rd millennium BC, or 4th millennium BC? 4th millennium BC. What is the traditional British dish made from fish and fried batter, often served with chips? Shepherd's pie, bangers and mash, or fish and chips? Of course, fish and chips, no trick questions here. Who led the Peasants' Revolt of 1381 in England? John Bull, Wat Tyler, or Simon de Montfort? Wat Tyler. Which significant battle in England is shown in the Bayeux Tapestry and took place in 1066? the Battle of Hastings, the Battle of Agincourt, or the Battle of Teuton? The Battle of Hastings. The United Kingdom consists of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Is that true or is it false? It's false. Which English monarch established the Church of England? Edward I, Henry VIII, or Richard II? Henry VIII. What was the name of the ship that carried the first British settlers to Australia in 1788? The Bounty, the Endeavour, or the First Fleet? The First Fleet. Which of these British monarchs was married to Queen Victoria? Prince Albert, Prince Charles, or King George VI? Prince Albert. Which city is known as the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution in the United Kingdom? Manchester, Birmingham, or London? It was Manchester. Which British poet wrote a poem about the fall of man? John Milton, William Blake, or Samuel Taylor Coleridge? John Milton. The ancient Roman town of Eboracum eventually became modern-day Exeter, York, or Bath? York. Which 1984-85 event involved widespread strikes and protests, especially in coal mining communities? The poll tax riots, the Winter of Discontent, or the miners' strike? The miners' strike. The famous Black Death that devastated Europe in the 14th century originated in Britain. Is that true or false? False. The Victoria Cross is awarded for which of the following in British military history? Political bravery, acts of bravery in battle, or longest service in the military? Acts of bravery in battle. Which British artist's 1939 Guernica painting reflected the devastation of war? David Hockney, Banksy, or Pablo Picasso? Pablo Picasso. Which British author created Sherlock Holmes and wrote the stark Monroe letters? Arthur Conan Doyle, H.G. Wells, or Agatha Christie? Arthur Conan Doyle. Which British monarch was the last to rule over both England and Scotland before 1707? Queen Elizabeth I, King Charles II, or Queen Anne? Queen Anne. Who led the British forces to victory at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805? Horatio Nelson, Francis Drake, or John Churchill? Yes, Horatio Nelson. Which British Prime Minister said, "You've never had it so good"? Edward Heath, Clement Attlee, or Harold Macmillan? Harold Macmillan. Which English city was the birthplace of Geoffrey Chaucer? London, Oxford, or Winchester? Excuse me. London. What was the primary aim of the Great Reform Act of 1832? Abolishing slavery, expanding voting rights, or establishing universal suffrage? Expanding voting rights. Which 1415 battle during the 100 Years' War is famous for the use of longbowmen? The Battle of Agincourt, the Battle of Crécy, or the Battle of Poitiers? The Battle of Agincourt. The famous London landmark Big Ben is actually the name of the clock tower. True or false? That is true. It's not the bell inside, but the name of the clock. The name of the bell inside is called Big Ben. I think the name of the clock is St Stephen's. Who was the British Prime Minister when the 1948 NHS Act was signed? Clement Attlee, Harold Wilson, or Tony Blair? Clement Attlee. The English Gothic architectural style emerged during which period of history? The Victorian era, the Middle Ages, or the Elizabethan age? The Middle Ages. Who painted the Hay Wain, depicting a rural scene with a cart in a river? J.M.W. Turner, John Constable, or George Stubbs? John Constable. Excuse me. Which British mathematician and codebreaker is considered the father of modern computer science? Alan Turing, Charles Babbage, or Isaac Newton? That is Alan Turing. What was the name of the first British colony in the Americas, founded in 1607? Plymouth, Jamestown, or Roanoke? Jamestown. Which British TV series features Doctor Who and the TARDIS? Sherlock, Doctor Who, or Downton Abbey? That's Doctor Who. What is the national flower of Wales, often worn by Welsh people on St David's Day? Thistle, daffodil, or shamrock? Yep, celebrated in March, it's the daffodil. Which famous British television network is known for producing the Great British Bake Off? BBC, ITV, or Channel 4? It is Channel 4. What mineral-rich water is featured at the Roman baths in Bath? Saline, radon, or thermal? They are thermal. What is the highest mountain in the United Kingdom? Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, or Snowdon? Ben Nevis. Which social media platform was co-founded by Ben Silbermann as a virtual vision board? Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter? Pinterest. Which British dish consists of lamb or beef in a pastry shell served with potatoes and gravy? Cornish pastry, beef Wellington, or shepherd's pie? Beef Wellington. Which British city hosts the annual Glastonbury Festival? London, Bristol, or Pilton? It's a little place called Pilton. What is the official currency used in the United Kingdom? Euro, dollar, or pound sterling? It's pound sterling. Which British island is known for its distillery of whisky, especially the brand Lapwing? Isle of Skye, Isle of Islay, or Isle of Man? Isle of Islay. What does the red diagonal cross of the Union Jack represent? St Andrew's Cross of Scotland, St David's Cross of Wales, or St Patrick's Cross of Ireland? St Patrick's Cross of Ireland. What is the main ingredient in the classic British dish Toad in the Hole? Sausages, potatoes, or fish? It is sausages. Which British singer released the albums 19 and 21? Adele, Amy Winehouse, or Florence Welch? That's Adele. Which British car brand is known for the DB11 and Vantage? Jaguar, Land Rover, or Aston Martin? Aston Martin. The London Eye was built to celebrate the turn of which millennium? 2000, 1990, or 1985? 2000. Which British artist created the physical impossibility of death in the mind of someone living? Damien Hirst, Tracy Emin, or Anish Kapoor? Damien Hirst. Which British charity founded by Bob Geldof and Major in 1984 helps children worldwide? Red Cross, UNICEF UK, or Band-Aid? Band-Aid. Excuse me. Which is the most populous city in the United Kingdom? Birmingham, Glasgow, or London? London. Which British scientist, known as the father of modern chemistry, discovered chemical affinity? Isaac Newton, Robert Boyle, or Michael Faraday? Robert Boyle. In which year did Britain officially decolonise India, ending the British Raj and transferring power to Indian leaders? 1942, 1947, or 1950? 1947. Which British director is known for the horror film The Witch? Danny Boyle, Christopher Nolan, or Robert Eggers? Robert Eggers. Which British dessert consists of layers of sponge cake, custard, and chocolate icing, often served chilled? Eton Mess, Victoria Sponge, or Trifle? Trifle. The British dish Bubble and Squeak is made from which leftover food? Roasted vegetables, mashed potato and cabbage, or beef and carrots? Mashed potato and cabbage. Which landmark in London is often referred to as the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street? St Paul's Cathedral, the Bank of England, or Westminster Abbey? The Bank of England. Which British inventor is often credited with the invention of the world's first practical telephone? Michael Faraday, Charles Babbage, or Alexander Graham Bell? Alexander Graham Bell. Who is the British scientist credited with inventing the World Wide Web in 1989 while working at CERN? Tim Berners-Lee, Steve Jobs, or Alan Turing? Tim Berners-Lee. Which British actor portrayed the character of Elrond in the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Orlando Bloom, Ian McKellen, or Hugo Weaving? Hugo Weaving. What is the oldest royal residence in continuous use in the United Kingdom? Windsor Castle, Sandringham House, or Kensington Palace? Windsor Castle. Which British company created the Colossus computer during the World War II? IBM, Bletchley Park, or British Telecom? Bletchley Park. Which London-based technology company founded in 2014 creates advanced AI for healthcare and education? DeepMind, Darktrace, or Babylon Health? DeepMind. And your last one. Which British actress won an Academy Award for her role in The Hours, portraying the character of Virginia Woolf? Nicole Kidman, Kate Blanchett, or Emma Thompson? Nicole Kidman. So, how did you do today? Drop your score in the comments below, and of course, like and subscribe so you get notified every time we post a new quiz. And join us next time on Quiz Time.